A single black mother, a truck she depended on, and a cop with too much power. When he destroyed her life in broad daylight, he thought there'd be no consequences. What he didn't know, her brother was ex-Delta Force. And when family is targeted, justice comes fast and without warning. Stay with us. Because this isn't just a story, it's a reckoning. Dear viewer, what you are about to witness is not just a story. It is a powerful testament to the quiet power and pursuit of justice in places most people ignore. If this is your first time here, I warmly invite you to share where you are watching in the comments below. And if stories like this move you, challenge you, or make you think, consider subscribing and clicking the bell icon. We share voices that deserve to be heard every day. Thank you for being here. Now, let's get into the story. It started with sunshine, soft, golden light filtering through the blinds of a modest two-bedroom home on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. Birds chirped lazily. The air smelled faintly of toast and coffee. It was the kind of morning you don't remember unless something unforgettable happens. And something unforgettable was about to. Janelle Carter, a 32-year-old single mother of two, laced up her shoes in the narrow hallway. Her 6-year-old son, Malcolm, was still finishing his cereal on the couch, cartoons flashing across the screen. Her older daughter, Nina, 12, and already full of quiet defiance, was stuffing books into her backpack with earbuds in, ignoring the world. They were late, as usual. But it was okay. This was just another Tuesday. At least that's what she thought. Janelle worked hard. Too hard, probably. 3 jobs, rotating schedules, and no child support. Her 2008 Dodge Ram, affectionately nicknamed Red, wasn't just a truck. It was a lifeline. It hauled furniture on the weekends for side gigs, helped neighbors during moves, and carried the only groceries they could afford from discount warehouses across town. It wasn't pretty anymore. Scratched, faded, but it ran, and that was enough. That morning, as they piled into the truck, Janelle didn't notice the black and white patrol car idling 2 blocks down. She didn't see the officer inside tapping his fingers on the steering wheel, eyes narrowed, already fixated. She didn't know she had been marked. She had no reason to. They pulled out of their quiet street and onto the main road. The school wasn't far. 10 minutes with green lights. The kids laughed at a joke Nina made about Malcolm's bedhead, the radio playing a mix of R&B and pop through old, crackling speakers. Then it happened. A sharp, blinding burst of red and blue exploded in the rearview mirror. Sirens wailed, louder than they needed to be. Janelle's stomach dropped. She pulled over instinctively, heart thudding. Malcolm looked confused. Nina pulled out her earbuds. "What did you do?" she asked, instantly on edge. "Nothing," Janelle whispered, rolling down the window halfway. Her hands were already on the wheel. Calm, polite, compliant. The officer approached like a storm. His boots hit the pavement with heavy, deliberate steps. His name tag read, Deputy Alan Voss. White, late 40s, clean-shaven, jaw clenched. He didn't speak until he reached the window. "License and registration." Janelle complied. "Sure. May I ask what the stop is for?" He didn't answer. He snatched the documents and turned without a word, walking back to his cruiser. The silence was deafening. Nina whispered, "Mom, he's not right." "I know. Stay quiet." Voss returned minutes later. But this time, he didn't stop at the window. He went straight to the front of the truck. Then something surreal happened. Something no warning, no protocol, no law justified. He pulled out his baton and with deliberate force began smashing the headlight. One swing. Two. Then he turned and shattered the driver's side mirror. "Hey!" Janelle shouted, flinging open the door. "What are you doing? My kids are in here." He looked at her like she was nothing. "This vehicle's not roadworthy. Unsafe. Looks stolen." "It's mine. Registered to me. You have the documents." "Step back, ma'am." "I'm not stepping anywhere. You're destroying my—" He shoved her. Hard. She hit the ground with a thud, gravel scraping her palms. Malcolm screamed. Nina fumbled for her phone, shaking. But Voss turned like he could smell it and barked, "No phones. You want to get arrested?" She froze, terrified. Janelle pushed herself up, dazed, confused, and angry. "You're on a power trip. You think because I'm black and driving an old truck with my kids in the back that I must be a criminal?" "I think," he sneered, "you need to learn some respect." And with that, he pulled a knife from his utility belt. Not to threaten them, no, but to slash the tires. One after another. Hiss. Population hiss. Janelle stood, paralyzed. It was happening so fast, so violently, and not a single person had stopped. Not one passing car. Not one open storefront. Just a mother, her children, and a man in uniform with too much power and no soul. The sound of rubber tearing was the sound of her independence dying. Then it got worse. He radioed in, saying the vehicle was suspicious and that backup might be needed. He didn't say he destroyed it himself. He didn't say a mother and her children were stranded on the roadside, traumatized. He just leaned against his car, arms folded, smirking. It was around then that Nina finally whispered something that changed everything. "Mom, should I call Uncle Ray?" At first, Janelle didn't respond. She was too stunned, too hollowed out by fear and fury. But then the name landed like a match dropped in dry grass. Uncle Ray, Raymond Carter, her brother, retired Delta Force. Quiet, calculating, relentless. He didn't speak much, didn't post on social media, didn't make waves. But he loved his sister, loved those kids. And above all, he hated injustice. Janelle met Nina's eyes and gave a small nod. Call him. Now. She didn't know what Ray would do. She didn't know how long it would take or what it would cost. But one thing was certain. Deputy Voss had just stepped into a war he didn't see coming. And this story, the one you're hearing now, was about to get much louder than he could ever imagine. Because what began as a morning like any other was about to rewrite the rules. Raymond Carter didn't get rattled. Not in Fallujah, not in Kandahar, and certainly not now. When the call from Nina came through, it was short, choked with tears, and barely coherent. But it was enough. Ray had been in the garage, fixing up an old Triumph motorcycle, the smell of oil and leather thick in the air. One look at his phone, one glimpse at the name Nina, paired with the words Mom, Officer, Truck, Help, and the calm evaporated. He didn't ask questions. He didn't waste time. He slid the toolbox aside and keyed the ignition on his black Ford Expedition, already loaded with emergency gear from a lifetime of muscle memory. Body cam scramblers, dash cams of his own, tactical vest, not for intimidation, but for insurance. In his world, you never waited for the cavalry. You were the cavalry. Charleston wasn't far, but traffic stretched long and thick like molasses on hot concrete. As he cut through side streets and ran 2 red lights, Ray felt something he hadn't in a while, an old familiar burn deep in his chest. It wasn't rage. Rage got you killed. This was different. It was surgical. cold, focused. He'd buried too many brothers to let emotions drive the wheel. But this was his sister, and someone had hurt her. He reached the location Nina had dropped in the message, somewhere just off King Street, near a strip of auto shops and convenience stores. When he pulled up, the scene looked like a war zone frozen in suburbia. The truck, red, was gutted, tires flat, glass broken, front end slumped like it had lost the will to stand. The kids were gone. Janelle too. But Ray had eyes like a hawk, trained for patterns. Tracks in the gravel showed the truck hadn't been towed. It had been dragged. Deep ruts, angled wrong. That was illegal. He took pictures. All of them. Time-stamped. GPS logged. He moved in silence, never broadcasting anger, only collecting data. Just like old times. Inside the corner gas station, the clerk, a young man barely out of high school, froze as Ray walked in. He didn't need to ask who Ray was. The resemblance to Janelle was strong. Same sharp jaw, same intense gaze. "You were here an hour ago," Ray said. The kid nodded. "You saw what happened?" The kid didn't speak. Ray leaned in, quiet, calm. "I'm not going to hurt you. I just need the truth." The kid hesitated, then almost whispering, "The cop, he went crazy, man. Broke her lights, the mirror, pushed her down. The kids were crying. He called for backup, but it wasn't real backup. It was his buddies, off-duty guys. They took her, said something about impound and investigation. But, man, it was wrong. I tried to film. He saw me, threatened to seize my phone, so I pretended to delete the video." Ray's eyes didn't blink. "Do you still have it?" The clerk nodded, slowly handing over the phone. Ray watched. The video was grainy, shaky, but undeniable. It showed everything. Janelle's fall, her screams, the slow, methodical destruction of her truck. A man in uniform relishing control. A crowd doing nothing. Ray emailed himself the file, encrypted it 3 ways, and handed the phone back. "What's your name?" "Tyrell." "You did the right thing, Tyrell." Ray left without another word. Now it was about tracking. He knew how these small-town machines worked. If a cop was going rogue, he wouldn't take her to the station. Not yet. He'd isolate her. Somewhere off-grid. Somewhere plausible. That meant old municipal properties, abandoned school buildings, unused training lots, places where people disappeared and paperwork told a different story. He called in a favor. Frank Delaney, former Homeland Security. Frank owed him from an op years ago when Ray had saved his life in a collapsed tunnel in Yemen. Now, Frank ran access to a network of license plate readers across the state. "Ray? Damn, man, it's been years. You calling means something's gone sideways. I need a ping. Patrol unit, Charleston PD, badge 46732. Vehicle ID ending in 8VJ. Give me a minute." It didn't take long. Got a hit. 37 minutes ago, vehicle passed a checkpoint heading east, away from the city. Last known tag scan was near Francis Marion National Forest, off a closed road. You know that area? Ray's jaw tightened. I do. That place is nothing but trees and radio dead zones. Exactly. He ended the call and floored the gas. On the way, he called Nina again. She answered, this time from a neighbor's phone. "Uncle Ray? I'm close. I'm going to find her." "Do you need help?" "No, baby. I've got it. Just stay safe." Ray arrived at the edge of the forest in under 30 minutes. He parked 2 miles out and continued on foot. Boots silent, breath controlled. The sun was beginning to fall behind the trees, casting the world in bruised amber and shadow. Then he saw it, a single cruiser, parked at the edge of a clearing near a rundown ranger outpost. And outside that cruiser, two men. Not one. Voss. And another. Bigger. Older. Unmarked uniform. Private security. Retired cop. Didn't matter. They were laughing. One of them was holding a phone, filming something. Ray circled wide, stayed low, trained eyes searching for movement. Then he saw it. Janelle, seated against a concrete wall, wrists zip-tied. She wasn't crying. She was glaring, alive, alert. That was enough. He moved like a ghost, 10 feet behind them before they ever heard him. The first man turned, startled, opening his mouth. Ray struck with precision, elbow to the throat. The man dropped, gasping for air. Voss reached for his weapon, but Ray was already there. A kick to the knee, a twist of the wrist, and the gun clattered to the ground. Ray pinned him with one arm, pressed his forearm to the deputy's throat. "Remember this moment?" Ray whispered. "You thought nobody would come for her. You thought she was alone." The deputy sputtered. "You're assaulting an officer." "You're not an officer," Ray growled. "You're a criminal with a badge, and now the world's going to know it." He zip-tied both men, dragged them out into the clearing, and turned to Janelle. She looked up at him with something close to relief, but fiercer, something like pride. "Took you long enough," she said. Ray smiled for the first time in hours. "Had to make sure I brought hell with me." Because justice wasn't coming. It had already arrived. When the dust settled and the sirens finally arrived, Janelle Carter stood tall, bruised, zip ties cut, clothes torn, but unbroken. The deputy who thought he could bury her had been left hog-tied and shivering in the dirt. His backup, the smug private enforcer, lay moaning beside him, shoulder dislocated. And in the center of it all stood Raymond, silent, calm, his boots planted like bedrock. It was over. Or at least, this chapter was. State officers had arrived first, drawn by the GPS pings Ray had sent from a burner device as soon as he secured the scene. They didn't speak much when they arrived. They didn't need to. The footage Ray had emailed to multiple contacts, the eyewitness testimony from Terrell at the gas station, and the condition of Janelle's truck all spoke louder than any badge ever could. They separated the victims from the perpetrators and began collecting statements. But for Janelle, the real reckoning wouldn't come from legal files. It had to come from reclaiming her dignity, piece by shattered piece. That evening, back at Nina's place, Janelle watched her daughter sleep on the living room couch, her arms wrapped around an old teddy bear. She had cried herself to sleep, exhaustion replacing terror. Raymond sat across the room, still in his dust-covered jeans and tactical boots, eyes fixed on a local news broadcast now covering alleged police misconduct in Francis Marion Forest. "They're already spinning it," he said, voice low, calling it a misunderstanding. Janelle didn't respond immediately. She was looking at her hands, still faintly red where the zip ties had dug into her skin. "They always spin it," she murmured. "That's the game. They break you, then they rewrite what you were." Ray stood and walked toward her. "Then let's rewrite it ourselves." The next day, Janelle sat before a bank of microphones at the Charleston Community Hall, invited by a small local alliance that advocated for racial justice. She hadn't planned to speak. Public attention made her stomach turn. But when she looked out into the modest crowd of neighbors, friends, and strangers, some black, some white, all waiting, all watching, something inside her shifted. Not anger, not vengeance, purpose. She cleared her throat. My name is Janelle Carter. I'm a mother. I'm a nurse. I pay taxes. I serve this city. Last week, I was dragged from my vehicle, handcuffed without cause, and left on the side of a gravel road, like my life didn't matter. I'm here to tell you, my life does matter. My daughter's life matters. And what happened to us wasn't just wrong. It was designed. The room was silent, but the weight of her words stirred something electric. She continued, her voice gaining strength. What that officer didn't expect, what they never expect, is that we're not alone anymore. My brother, a former Delta Force operator, came for me. But more importantly, you came. The neighbors who brought food. The clerk who recorded the video. The women who marched outside the sheriff's office this morning. She paused, eyes scanning the faces in the crowd. That's what rising looks like. Not vengeance, not destruction. Truth. Courage. Community applause began slowly, then grew. Clapping hands, rising feet, cheers that shook the floor. But Janelle didn't smile. She wasn't done. Let's not lie to ourselves. This didn't start with me, and it won't end with me. But today, we made it harder for the next crooked officer to act in the dark. We put light there, and we're going to keep it there. By that evening, her speech had gone viral. National outlets picked it up. Some praised her calm, her courage. Others, more cynical, tried to poke holes. But it didn't matter. The video of Deputy Voss crushing her taillight with the butt of his flashlight couldn't be explained away. Nor could his smirk when she asked if she was under arrest, and he said, no, just under me. Raymond worked behind the scenes, coordinating with civil rights attorneys, helping vet whistleblowers who now began contacting him anonymously. It turned out Voss wasn't alone. There were others. Officers with complaints buried, cases sealed, incidents erased. Janelle's case had pulled back a curtain. But Janelle didn't become a figurehead. She didn't want to. She kept her shifts at the hospital, returned to her church choir, braided Nina's hair on Sundays, and replaced Red's broken windows herself with a neighbor who refused to take payment. You've given us all something, the woman said. The least we can do is help you get back on the road. That phrase stuck with Janelle. Back on the road. It wasn't just about the truck. It was about dignity, healing, ownership. She began attending city hall meetings again, this time not as a silent back row figure, but as a speaker. She started a small mentorship circle for single moms. Not formal, just coffee, stories, and strength. Raymond stayed a few weeks longer than planned, not because Janelle needed him, but because he wanted to see the full arc. One morning, she found him standing in front of Red, newly painted, fresh tires, a rebuilt engine purring like a lion. You did this? She asked. Ray nodded. Didn't think the old girl should go out like that. Janelle walked around the truck, hand running along the smooth panels. She exhaled deeply. They tried to take everything. My job, my home, my daughter's peace of mind. Ray's voice was gentle. They didn't. You're still standing. Janelle looked up, her eyes clearer than they'd been in weeks. Not just standing, moving, forward. He grinned. That's my sister. Because some rubble wasn't meant to be swept away. Some of it needed to be built on, brick by brick, story by story. And now, Janelle was building something stronger than any badge could ever break. When a system built on silence starts to crack, it doesn't go down without a fight. 2 days after Janelle's speech, a fire was set in the alley behind the Charleston Community Hall. The surveillance camera that usually pointed at the dumpster had been disabled. It burned low and fast, destroying donation bins, melting plastic chairs, charring a mural painted by local teens. No one was injured, but the message was unmistakable. That same evening, Raymond received an encrypted email from a contact in military intelligence who still owed him a favor. Surveillance indicates unknowns watching your sister's home. 3 nights in a row. Vehicle parked across street. Engine off. 2 men. No tags. No plates. It didn't matter that the story had gone viral, that the sheriff's office had issued a statement saying the investigation into Deputy Voss had been handed over to the state. Beneath the surface, another machine was still humming, one that didn't operate in the light. Janelle wasn't being ignored anymore. She was being watched. Raymond showed her the email over coffee. She didn't flinch. So what do we do? Ray leaned forward. We counter. For the first time in years, the brother and sister became more than just family. They became a team. The counterattack didn't start with weapons. It started with paper. Janelle and Raymond met with civil rights attorneys who specialized in police misconduct. Together, they filed a federal lawsuit not only against Deputy Voss, but against the department's leadership, who had repeatedly ignored complaints about him. The attorneys requested full access to Voss's disciplinary record. When the city tried to delay, the attorneys went public. Every news station from Charleston to Atlanta carried the story. Public opinion tilted harder. The local sheriff called for a town hall to ease tensions. He called it an open dialogue with concerned citizens. Janelle called it what it was: damage control. Still, she went. That evening, the community center auditorium was packed. Men and women from every neighborhood in Charleston filled the seats. Some had signs. Some just carried anger. Janelle sat in the front row, Nina beside her, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Raymond stood near the back, arms folded, a quiet presence with a weight of thunder behind him. The sheriff took the podium, his tie too tight, sweat already rising beneath his collar. We are here tonight, he began, because one incident does not reflect who we are as a department. A low murmur swept the room. Janelle stood. No microphone. No permission. One incident? Her voice carried anyway. My neighbor filed a complaint 3 months ago when Voss shoved her son's face into a fence during a traffic stop. You never responded. The woman behind me, her brother spent a night in jail for arguing with Voss about parking too close to a hydrant. She turned to the crowd. Stand up if you or someone you love has had a run-in with Voss or someone like him. Over half the room rose to their feet. The sheriff stared, his face pale. Someone shouted, "We're done being quiet." Another voice added, "You let it happen." The sheriff stammered, "We're implementing training." "No," Janelle cut in, her voice calm but slicing. "You're reacting because you got caught." The next day, the department's press office issued a statement that read like a surrender. Voss was suspended indefinitely. An internal review would begin immediately. A third-party monitor was being brought in. But for Janelle, this wasn't enough. Her family had been threatened, stalked, and dismissed. So, she leaned deeper into the storm. She spoke at schools, on podcasts, even on a national daytime talk show hosted by a former journalist turned activist. Each time, she refused to play the victim. She spoke as a builder of change, not because she wanted the spotlight, but because silence was no longer an option. Raymond worked the flanks. Quietly, he coordinated with watchdog organizations to uncover other officers with similar records to Voss, those shielded by paperwork and silence. He helped aggregate complaints, sort whistleblower testimony, and pass it to journalists. Within weeks, a web began to emerge, one that showed not just isolated bad actors, but a culture of impunity. Then came the leak. A confidential memo was sent anonymously to a local reporter. It showed that 5 months prior, the department had conducted a review of officers flagged in civilian complaints. Voss was on that list, marked with a red asterisk and the note, "Internal risk, high-profile liability if escalated." Yet he had been promoted to lead a neighborhood task force. The memo hit the airwaves like wildfire. Now, the city couldn't hide. The mayor's office announced a special session of the city council to discuss law enforcement reform. Pressure came not only from activists, but from ordinary residents. Janelle began to receive letters, handwritten ones. A retired white teacher from North Charleston wrote, "I used to believe in the system because it worked for me. You've shown me that doesn't mean it works for everyone." At night, Janelle would sit on the porch and read them aloud to Ray, her voice steady, but never proud. Because this wasn't about being right. It was about being heard. For the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid to take up space. But then came the retaliation. Late one night, someone slashed the tires on her newly repaired truck, spray painted her garage door with the words, "Stay in your lane." The police took the report, but showed no urgency. Ray installed cameras the next day. Janelle called a local news crew. She gave them a statement from her porch, with the damaged truck behind her. "If they wanted to scare me back into silence," she said, "they should have tried harder before I knew how many people stood behind me." The camera panned to her neighbors standing quietly in the driveway. A dozen of them. Old, young, black, white. Not holding signs, just standing, showing up. The segment aired across the state. That was the night the tide turned again. Because courage, once awakened, doesn't retreat. It multiplies. And Janelle Carter had learned something that no corrupt badge, no threat, no system of fear could erase. When they come for your silence, you fight back with your voice. The morning the verdict came down, Charleston held its breath. It had been 4 months since the incident that turned Janelle Carter's world upside down. 4 months of court filings, press conferences, smear campaigns, and tireless advocacy. 4 months of community meetings, protest vigils, and children whispering her name like she was someone they might become someday. 4 months of holding her daughter while pretending not to be afraid. And now, the courthouse doors opened. Janelle stood outside, surrounded by reporters, family, and a growing crowd of supporters who had followed her story from the first broken taillight to the last filed brief. Nina held her mother's hand. Raymond stood behind them, as he always had, calm, focused, and ready for anything. The judge's words echoed through the speakers set up for the crowd. "We find the defendant, Deputy Stephen Voss, guilty on all counts." The crowd gasped, then erupted into cheers. Some wept. Some simply stood, stunned that justice, real, full, public justice, had actually arrived. Janelle didn't smile at first. She closed her eyes, breathed in the weight of the moment, and let the tears fall. Not because the fight was over, but because for the first time, the truth had been acknowledged where it mattered most, in the eyes of the law. No excuses, no deflection. Just the truth, spoken plainly, under oath, in a courtroom filled with people who chose to see. Raymond squeezed her shoulder. "You did this," he said quietly. Janelle turned to him. "Number we did." Outside the courthouse, reporters flooded forward. Cameras flashed. Microphones were thrust forward. One journalist asked, "Janelle, what do you want people to remember about this day?" She didn't hesitate. That no one is invisible. That silence is a tool used by people in power to keep others afraid. But when we speak, together, we can be louder than the systems built to silence us. It wasn't a speech rehearsed for effect. It was a truth forged in pain, protest, and perseverance. Later that day, she returned home. On the front porch were flowers from strangers, a card that read, "You help my daughter believe in herself again," a tray of food left by a neighbor she barely knew. Inside, Nina was already sketching something at the kitchen table. A badge, but broken in half, with light coming through the crack. Her own way of making sense of it. Janelle stood in the doorway and watched her daughter draw in peace. No sirens, no threats, just silence. The good kind, the healing kind. Justice had come. Not perfectly, not easily, but it had come. And this time, it arrived in the light. What began as an ordinary morning for Janelle Carter quickly became a nightmare that would unravel the quiet life she had built for herself and her daughter Nina. A routine drive ended in destruction, not just of her truck, but of her dignity, her safety, and her sense of trust in the system meant to protect her. A racist deputy's abuse of power wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a mirror reflecting a deeper, systemic disease. But what no one counted on was the power of resilience, the strength of family, and the presence of a force they couldn't see coming. Her brother, Raymond. Raymond Carter, a retired Delta Force operator, didn't react with blind vengeance. He responded with precision, strategy, and an unwavering commitment to justice. While others saw only a single mother, vulnerable and alone, Raymond knew better. And he reminded the world of the power that lies within those who have nothing left to lose and everything to protect. Through investigations, legal battles, and community mobilization, the Carters transformed their pain into purpose. Their courage forced a corrupt system into the light. Deputy Stephen Voss was not only convicted, he became a symbol of a system that would no longer go unchecked. And more than that, the community, once fractured by fear and silence, united in their support of Janelle and Nina. In the end, this was never just about a truck or a bad cop. It was about power. Who holds it? Who abuses it? And what happens when those who've been trampled rise together to reclaim it? It was about family, and how even in the face of fear, the bonds of love and loyalty are stronger than any badge or title. Janelle, Nina, and Raymond didn't just survive, they changed the story. The lesson here is clear. Justice is not automatic. It must be fought for, demanded, and defended. Silence allows injustice to flourish. But when we speak up, when we stand together, the ripple effect is unstoppable. Whether you're a parent, a neighbor, a teacher, or a stranger watching from afar, you have power. Use it. Question authority. Support the vulnerable. Share the truth. And never, ever think your voice is too small to matter. If this story moved you, don't let it stop here. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded of the strength that lives in all of us. Comment below. Tell us how this story made you feel, or share your own. Most importantly, subscribe to this channel so we can continue telling real stories that inspire action, expose truth, and remind us of the power we hold when we refuse to back down. Your support means everything. Together, we make justice impossible to ignore.